maybe end by coming out and talking with both artists, but we definitely want this to be a conversation, and so if you guys have questions along the way, just, we want it to be much more conversational than kind of standing here and talking. I think I know most of you, and this is such a great group of people to be here tonight to have this conversation, but if I don't know you, I'm Sarah. I'm the Director of Education at the Visual Art Center of New Jersey, which is how I met Donna and got introduced to her work, and also actually how I met Danielle and got introduced to her work. So I have to say that I was really excited when I got the card for these two shows happening at the same time, and seeing just the titles, Now Can You See the Monument and Heavy and Loaded, and knowing that this strong work of two female artists were showing together, and feeling also like the titles were just really bold and provocative, and I thought it was such a good pairing, and was just really excited to be involved with the show. So I wanted to start out, Donna, by asking you, so the title of your show is from, if anyone didn't know, there's a book over there on the table with the full poem in it, but the title of the exhibition is after an Elizabeth Bishop poem called The Monument. And the poem itself begins with a question, it actually implies a series of failed attempts. Now can you see the monument? And it ends with a command, and the very last line of the poem says, watch it closely. So the end of the statement for this show is, we're at a turning point. This is what the work of Donna Conklin King asks us to participate in. Her work asks us to consider what legacy do we wish to leave behind. And on our current path, there are the self-destructive idols we worship and the monuments that these will leave behind, the archaeological consequences of our society if left unchecked. So this exhibition very much obviously, or this statement ties into the title of the show, and I wondered if we could start by you telling us a little bit about basically, in looking at these works as monuments, what are they commemorating, and what should we be watching closely?
Well, they're commemorating many things regarding consumption and food and a relationship to food and the body and the environment. All of them are actually cast out of food containers. Specifically, I have thought long and deep about our relationship to sugar and other food substances in terms of the human body. Sugar is actually 8 times more addictive than crack cocaine, and it's in all of our food. And it's something that's been prevalent in my mind for a while. It's not something we talk about very much, but it's the whole food system, the whole food chain is controlled by corporate entities. Industrial agriculture, and so it comes from the personal, though, and I think the personal is political, as we know. And I'm commemorating, I guess, that institution.
Did most people recognize these as the food containers that they were cast in that? Was that like an immediate recognition? Or? No?
Yeah, no, people might know from seeing my work before that it's from food containers, so that's limited, and it started with really looking in my own recycling can and considering my own personal health and going through health issues and really thinking about global issues around health, but more personal, and how those tie in together, and trying to create an awareness, but first making something that's as beautiful as the containers themselves, because they are really beautiful patterned things, and I'm talking specifically plastic. I'm not really talking about paper, which a lot of our food can come in paper. Fast food especially comes in paper. So there's so many layers of that. There's artists that have created, industrial designers that have created these containers and designed them, and they're both practical and beautiful. So it's nice that it can work on two levels. I want to draw you in with maybe the beauty of them, and then the subtext being, wow, what do I eat? What do I eat on a daily basis? What happens to that container, and how does this affect my body, what I'm putting in my body? If everything's sugar, and most of these are from cakes. A lot of these are cake containers. I've limited it to, not all of them, but there's a large portion of them are cake or sugar related. Like a lot of these are soda bottles, and some are water, and some are smaller juices. And then there's a cheat in there. $10 we can figure out what it is. Even the glass is refrigerator glass from refrigerator shelving that broke. So yeah,
Great. Okay, so you also speak about the juxtaposition of masculine, how the juxtaposition of masculine and feminine is exciting, and you wrote, concrete is the material used in pouring the foundations of buildings. It's inherently masculine work and also carries the weight of the building it's built on. This is a parallel to women's work, always behind the scenes, always supporting the architecture of the family or social structures. So I wanted to see if you could unpack that a little bit for us. Basically, has making a feminist statement always been a part of your work? How has it evolved? And also, when did you start working in concrete? And was that a specific material choice tied to that thinking?
a lot of questions.
Sorry.
No, it's so there's also a metaphor of foundations of nutrition. The foundation being concrete, and foundation and construction, and the structure, the strength and structure of a building is also the strength and structure of your body. What you put into it feeds you, it feeds your mind, it feeds everything. Your sexuality, your thinking, brain fog. So it's also a protector in the same way that a building is a protector, has walls and guides. The feminist aspect of it, I'm a woman, so I believe that your art should be based on personal experience to be authentic. So I'm going to be from the perspective of a female. And yet, I also embody masculine. So for me, the concrete has a two-part importance to it. I want it to be permanent, and I want it to be that foundation.
And sorry, but also just like a really practical question, when did you start?
Yes, okay. I was working with plaster before this, and I worked in concrete in the past. I've done some concrete work in the 90s, and when I got to this point in casting out of the containers, I was using plaster to see where it would take me. And that piece over there called Machine is the first real piece that began the whole series. But plaster's not a permanent material. At one point, it fell off the wall, and it cracked, it broke. And I had to decide, am I going to move forward with this, or am I going to just abandon this altogether? And I decided to stay with it, and I actually worked with the plaster, and I got it to where I want, and it took more hours than any rational human might take. But I knew that it would be a lesson on the other end, and that's cast and it's carved, and there's a lot of aspects to it. I did a lot of learning on that piece. But I realized after that I can't work in materials that are not permanent, and I don't want to be spending the rest of my life as an artist storing all of my impermanent artwork if I don't get, breakthrough, which you can't count on that. So I also have been moving towards the realm of color art. So that's where the decision to move towards material that could be outdoors and monumental. And also, honestly, there aren't that many people, there aren't that many artists working in concrete. And it fits me. I have a foundry background. I worked in bronze and I worked in steel, and I'm just not excited by it. I love Beverly Pepper, God rest her soul, but just steel didn't do it for me. And this just fit perfectly. So I started to experiment with the concrete, and there are different recipes you can use. There's, it could go a lot of directions. And of course, I keep it white because I want white to feel like bones or fossils, because this is about the archaeology to me. In my mind, it is about the legacy of our consumption, mostly in terms of food and nutrition. I mean, I could get on my platform and lecture about that as being what's behind it, but I don't necessarily want to hit you in the head with just that, because you've got to come to it with your own experience.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions directly for them? I have one. Oh, yeah.
What's that word from a color word on the floor? Was that the refrigerator?
Oh, right. No, this I created for the floor, although I honestly wouldn't mind it on the wall. But I thought of it as like an archaeological dig. I imagined it as something you would dig up, like talking about our legacy, our history, something, and the same with this one as well, like something that they would look back and say, this is what our society was ultimately made of. Like these are, the food you eat becomes you. You are what you eat. This is the future if we don't change the idea. It also impacts you a little differently. When you're something in the wall, you're faced with it, and you kind of walk around it and away from it. Here, it's larger. You react to it differently physically.
It's also more often how you see a monument.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I had a question about the design. Were you inspired by any textile work or floor designs when you assemble the pieces, or just kind of came together?
Actually, it was more influential from the mosaic practice I have. I have more of a teaching mosaic practice, but the spatial relationships and the way you cut tile and create a mosaic was where I was coming on. I thought of these shapes, especially all the castings, as like an alphabet. All the shape, an alphabet of shapes that I could manipulate and cut and to create a pattern.
Did you create that pattern first, or did you just kind of keep making smaller pieces, piling them, and then knowing when you were going to install, you were going to have to create a pattern?
I started with pieces and placed them. It kind of evolved organically, but I realized that there was, I didn't conceive of it ahead of time to make drawings. It was about process. I'm very definitely a process. I like things to happen instinctively. I like there to be, I don't really think things through. I don't know what it's going to look like at the end. I much prefer to have the surprise, or have it be about the evolution of thought and the conversation with the work, both the material and the shape, the textures inside, the pattern of it. Probably had some influence as I went along, but it was more about what you're eating and doing and all the things you consume. The fun part is that there's some very mathematical. This is 10 and that one's 8. Is that 10? That one's 8 and that's 10. So, I think of them as mosaics. I've had people call them mandalas, but I stay away from that definition because that's a much spiritual practice. That
I was going to say even something like you see above the sky, helicopter view. Maybe, for example, for me, Taino language on Puerto Rico and
what was
this,
that?
just the idea of hieroglyphics. I think of hieroglyphics, but helicopter view.
Oh, yeah.
Where you're looking at it from the space where it looks like that, and it's kind of telling you something that's going on. And I thought of the idea of Puerto Rico having hieroglyphics shown from the island of love, because it showed me, in my opinion, and I didn't know that these were recyclable items. I had no idea when I walked into this spot. It was only after the fact. And I think that that's really great because you spoke about male and female, right? And I don't know which side is male or female on this one specifically, but I do think that you do think of that with your pieces. And I'm interested to know which one would be the male side and the female side to this piece right here.
I don't know that I
Or
make a
was
distinction.
that-
I think it's
no?
all a blend. I think
Okay.
of concrete as a very masculine material,
Yeah.
and I think pattern to be more feminine. But so the combination of them straddles both. But there's also the idea that food and
But that's a really interesting point, the kind of bird's eye view, and also starts to play with a little bit of like the macro, micro, like what the scale is, and then
Yeah.
trying back to the
Just
monument
thinking
as
of
well.
it, yeah.
Yeah, Donna, can you tell us a little bit about some of your influences, art or not art?
sure, lots of influences, really, a little of everybody. But I would say some more recent, Rachel White-Reed, definitely, for use of negative space and casting out of not only architectural elements, but material. And that's something I always liked and worked with, the essence of the thing that's no longer there. And of course, Louise Bourgeois. And what else? There's probably plenty of forgetting, but yeah. For these works, at least.
Yeah, a lot of German sculptors.
Yeah. I can't, sorry, I can't name the man.
Does anyone have any more questions for Donna? Because if not, I think we might move into Danielle's space.
Charlie, did you?
One sort
Oh,
of quick
sorry.
question, it's just a process
Yeah.
question. Concrete for the buildings always has to be cured. Do you have to go through that?
Well, yeah, I actually concrete takes about a month to cure, but concrete actually never stops curing. It's a month of just the major curating, and then it slows down too, but it's always curing. But I don't necessarily hold to that. It just, you can see the changes in color as it cures. Like it really dries out, it really changes.
So you have to
Lightens up,
monitor
it starts with a grayer tone and then lightens up.
Thanks.
And this is a really specific type of concrete, right? The dress
Yes.
and white.
A lot of mixes you can use, and I'm partial to white Portland cement, and I use different aggregates.
But then you've also added to that piece over there
Yes.
to give it, if everyone can see that like kind of pinkish tint. That's
Oh,
what-
this one.
Yeah.
There's two in the room that are actually, on these, there's a couple of them that I added iridescent paint. Because I was going for the inside of the seashell feel. And I hesitated because it's a craft, I think it's crafty, but that's okay. I think that's the feminine, I don't know. But it's also inside this one, which is called Barnacle. And then I actually strayed a little bit in this one here. This one here, I wanted it to have a little bit of a yellow light, so that was like black.
So then those are mixed in with the concrete ones.
Yeah, the pigment is mixed in with the concrete. I wouldn't do a surface. I would never paint. To me, that painting, I would add gold leaf and resin, but I wouldn't paint with paint because it's not permanent. Again, I'm like, in my head, it's got to be permanent. If it can't go outside, I don't want it under. So that also was a lead to put that iridescent paint because that could wear off. Like it's just maybe too many years of having to store my sculptures inside that I'm partly influenced by that decision too.
Well, it's interesting how artists like set up their own like parameters, like, okay, I
Yeah.
do this, but I don't do
I
that.
think limits are good.
Limits, yeah.
Parameters are good.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was just saying it's also like a taking up space thing. I feel like also as like a woman artist to be like, I want my things to be permanent and I want them in public is like
Yeah, I'm running out of space. I mean, these are
Yeah.
even, I don't store them like this way. I put them in boxes. The boxes are huge. At this point, I've got little paths around them. Right now, I'm loving it because everything's here.
So it takes a month to cure. So how long for this body of work? When did you start this? A long time ago.
It's funny, there's no perfect timeline on it, because that piece, I don't remember what year I made that piece, but I made that, and then I kind of left for a while. I
Uh-huh.
did some other things, and then I came back to it.
Uh-huh.
But, 2014,
So maybe like 6 to 8 years. But like that's the
yeah,
whole
generally.
show.
But most of the work here, like this whole section here was in the last, well, except for the last 2 years. This is 2018. This was like the breakthrough. That was the first, and then the other way. Most recent.
No, Donna, I wasn't here, so I didn't hear your whole.
That's okay.
Are all of these pieces able to be put outside? They could
Yeah,
live,
except
they
for
could
the
live
sheet.
outside?
Yeah. Well, and then Party Girl over there, those are real pillows, so if somebody wanted that to fit outside, I'd have to cast those out of concrete.
Okay.
Which is actually in the
I'm
plan.
looking at the stuff on the wall.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I don't know how well those pearls would last.
Can you tell us a little bit about the rabbit series?
Oh, yeah, the rabbits. The rabbits represent femininity, passive. They're also, I mean, I say white rabbit means good luck. So, they are feminine.
And do they fit into the recycled theme?
All the bases on them are, they're a mix-up of body and environment. So like the 2x2 on the top left, that's really the environment. That's caps melting out. They're meant to be a little fun.
But the bases of them are still
Yeah, the 2x2, they're all containers. They're all food, absolutely food containers. Either muffins or something sweet. Yeah, muffins and cake. It's like the kind of plastic you would buy cake at, say, Costco. Like the honeycomb pieces are all from cheesecake containers from Costco. So I saw those and I was like, these are honeycomb. And, our honeybees are in danger. Our whole food source could be destroyed if we lose the honeybees. So, and also, one thing I didn't say about process. Most of this wall and these pieces were cast in containers and then added to or manipulated after the fact. Whereas these pieces are mostly, I started to play with the actual molds, the containers, and I created new containers out of a combination of containers and then made one casting. So like those pearls, those are all cast in one casting. They're not added after the fact. So the bottles, everything, one mold and one casting, nothing added after, all within one cast.
So just wondering, because you mentioned the cheesecake when you saw it at Costco.
Yeah.
So does your work then influence what you consume?
Yes.
I don't,
Is that part of your, is that
like
part
you
of
end
your
up buying
parameters?
something
I
on
have to
impulse
eat
because
it.
of the container, you could use
No,
your
I don't, see, that's all part of what, I have been on this journey with nutrition and health.
Yeah.
And I'm trying not to ever eat sugar. It's hard. Like I said, it's addictive as crap. It's
Yeah.
more addictive than crap. And flour and all that. And you hear all these gurus out there. And so no, like these pieces, I wasn't going to buy all that many cakes and eat. So I ended up getting some from Restaurant Supply. But initially I was pretty much collecting from when I found them. Like they were either mine that I brought into my home or discovered somewhere else that I was consuming food. Yeah, this
It's
one.
like the
I
perfect
actually-
excuse to eat something really unhealthy.
Yeah.
I mean, like, just doing it for the package. I need it for my work.
It's
Yeah.
It's a reminder not to eat the sweets if
That's
you're
true.
compiling them. Because stacked so tall, it makes you really realize how much sugar.
Yeah.
Vicious cycle. So,
Yeah,
There's some good films about this. One of them is called Fed Up that Katie Couric produced. There's a lot of information out there if anyone wants to jump in that hole. But a lot of these are about physical body. They're just kind of wanting to give the essence of how it feels or what your body is going through or how it's affected by food. It's the whole reason.
Any other questions for Donna? We're going to move in and talk with Danielle, but then we'll move back out at the end and talk with both of them. So also, if you want to think about more questions for Donna, you'll have another chance. Let's migrate years, but it was actually really nice in preparation for this evening. I came early and spent a lot more time with it. And just thinking about it. So again, going back to what I was saying at the beginning, and the provocativeness of your title, Heavy and Loaded. I started doing a little bit of reading about your work, and one of the things that you wrote was, I'm unapologetic about my work and happy to share what has haunted my creative mind for years. And you also wrote about a recent trip to Cuba that you took, and feeling the influence of that trip in this show. Not only the contemporary art that you were looking at and the artists that you were relating to, but you wrote about the influence of your ancestors because you have you're Cuban in descent. So I just decided to go ahead and start with a heavy and loaded question. I wanted to see if you could walk us through the journey of some of this body of work, how you came up with the title, and those influences that were somewhat recent as you were kind of finalizing this work, and some of the conversations you had with your ancestors.
Okay. So the title Heavy and Loaded, it hit me one day. I started off as an oil painter, a trained oil painter, and I was painting these beautiful paintings filled with color, and people could see where I was from through the colors that were in there. And one day I just stopped and I was like, I can't keep painting this. I can't keep doing this. I don't want to sell things that are just pretty. And in the back of my head, something just kept hitting me like, why are you not putting out what you're putting in your journal? What you're not writing? Why are you not saying it? And why are you afraid to do something like that? My last visit with my mentor, she sat me down and she said to me, Danielle, why? Why are you not creating what is heavy and what is loaded in your heart? And that came from Miss Grauer. And Miss Grauer said to me, you can't keep doing this. You have a lot to say, stop holding it in, and speak. So that's where this came from. And I started my residency at MANA Contemporary in April. 2 weeks start going into my residency, I took a trip to Cuba with Ben. And I was there for 10 days. And when I tell you I walked. I went to the beach maybe once, but I learned something at the beach, and I'll get to that. But while there, I was there for the Havana Biennial, and I went to every gallery, every museum, every installation that was outside. And I was getting kind of pulled while I was there. So I would see little things, and I'm like, oh, wow. I have these things in my work, and why am I not putting them out there? My background is my grandpa is Cuban. He's an Afro-Cuban. My grandma is Polish, but my religion is Jewish. So in my household already, it was heavy and loaded. So we practiced, you had Christmas and you had Hanukkah. You had both. My grandpa speaks Spanish, and then you have my grandma who speaks Yiddish. There's many elements to my upbringing, and I just said, finally, I need to start putting that out there. So that's what this series is about. A lot of people think it's just about my ancestry going back to being African. It's not. There's a lot of Jewish influences in this work that I can speak about or share with you. And like I said, I just, at this point in my studio, said I can't hold on to what is inside of me. And another influence for that would be Ben. Ben said the same thing to me. He said, Danielle, you're Cuban. You've never been to Cuba. take this trip. You need to go. He was like, I see it. You have to go. And being there just made me feel like I was home with my mother. As a child, I used to tell my mother, please don't go in my room. I said, I know when you're in there, and I'll share this with you. I would come home and I'm like, why is my room so clean? And my mom let me do whatever I wanted in my room, but my mom also practiced Santeria. So I knew when my mom's godmothers were there. I was like, Mom, keep them out. Just keep them out of my room. If they go in there, they're straightening up my stuff, they're cleaning up my stuff. I can smell when they're in there. You know, like I knew they were there. And then when my mom finally, transitioned, she had to wear white all year, they would come in and out, and I was like, oh God, okay, Mom, like, I can't take it. And I would just say, Mom, just keep them out. And then now I know what they were doing though. They were cleaning my room. They were cleaning our house, they were cleaning our spirits. They were just cleaning, and I had no clue what was going on. And then I learned about my Orishas. I learned about, Ogun, Oshun, everyone. I was just like, wow. So my one trip to the beach, and I brought it back with me, it's here. It's in one of the pieces, it's near Miss Linda. There's a bone in there. And I was on the beach, and I was just sitting there. I wasn't there long, and this bone washed up. And I kept looking at it, and I was like, what is this from? Is it a person? Is it a chicken? Is it this? Is it that? I was like, oh, this has to be a sign. It's something. So I picked it up, and I brought it home with me, because I knew I wanted to use the set of bones I had. So in this space, there's some spirits in here, and there's Miss Grauer's in here. There's some of her things from her studio. Miss Caldwell is in here, if you know who Alita Caldwell is. And then there's this woman in Jersey City. She's actually a supervisor, and she allowed me into her studio. And she said, Danielle, you're the only artist I would let come into my mom's studio. My mom passed away last year. And I asked her why. Her name is Juanita. And she said, because I think that you should come here. I went in her studio, and she was walking around. She just kept saying, thank you, Mom. Thank you, Mom. And I'm just watching. I'm like, why is she talking to her mother? Her mom's passed away. She just keeps saying, thank you, Mom. And then I started doing the same thing out of nowhere. I'm picking up things, and I'm like, thank you, Mom, putting them in the bag. I walked out with 5 containers. So she's in here. The chains are her. There's a lot of her in here. Spoons are her. Little people are her. The pins are her. So there's a lot of elements of these women in my work that I just needed to share with everyone.
Great, you just answered a few of the questions. Sorry, had prepared. But it's good segue. One of them was a very more practical question, but yeah, when working with found objects, like how do you find your objects? And it seems like it's an organic process that you have tied to an emotional and spiritual connection. Do you ever just like go on Amazon and order 200 doll heads, or like?
No, the doll heads is an artist. I saw her work, and she saw my work, and there was components in my work that she wanted, and there was some in hers that I wanted, and we just trade. I go back and forth. So the doll heads was, she didn't want to use them anymore, and I was like, you know what? How many do you have? And she was like, a lot. I was like, I'm coming to get them. So this piece, I actually cried doing this piece. And so a lot of the pieces in here I've cried, processing them and doing them. So there's a few. That's one, this is one, the one in the front, I've sat and I've cried with these pieces. But specifically this one makes me think of my great-grandmother. And so this deals with the Holocaust, and it deals with being numbered, placed into a gas chamber, and what is left of you? Your skull. That is it. That's what's left when you're pulled out of that. And I'm just thinking about just the many children, women, fathers, mothers, sisters, everyone who was placed in there. And they weren't looked at as a human. They were just looked at as this, just a number, let me just throw you in there. And that's what this piece is. So it's basically the target that was placed on someone because they were Jewish. And I'm the non-traditional Jew. I have numbers on me. I'm tattooed everywhere. And one specific number that's on me is my Jewish grandmother's birthday, which is on my wrist.
Another thing that you wrote is an artist understands that they have a responsibility to enlighten, empower, and inform. I think it's interesting as we listen to a lot of the language that's surrounding us right now, and listening to a lot of language transitions. We used to more often use the word tolerance when it came to diversity. Now we're leaning towards love. There used to be, safe spaces for us to say things and come out. Now it's brave space. Social justice is, of course, everywhere, but then now I'm hearing it constantly exchanging with healing justice. So there's an activation, there's in a certain way an elevation towards love. So this is, I'm going to try to phrase this the best way that I can, but I'm wondering how, when obviously so much of this work is coming from, yes, your personal family, but then you're tying it to the larger community stories of those particular communities, and a really interesting mix of that. I'm wondering how you basically in your practice you enter the studio and you're wanting to bring out these issues that are of rage and of suffering and of outrage at the same time with a desire for healing, transformation, and love. Like, it's almost that kind of question of like, how do you approach making work that can hold space with all of those things?
Interesting. I'm starting to consider myself a storyteller when I work. And a lot of the pieces deal with reality today, things that are going on in America today. The issues in America when it comes to women, when it comes to children of color. That's a lot of it. And I think with my work, instead of hiding what I have to say, is putting it out, maybe so people can heal, so maybe people can see. It forces people to see what is going on. Specifically, and I can use this piece as an example, I am a mom of 3, and my oldest is 18, my daughter is 17, so this is my son, Jacob, my daughter, Eden. And when I think of that word, when you're saying love, one of the hardest things I've had to do within the last 2 years, 3 years, is sit my son down and kind of tell him, and I'm thinking of love, you're love, but you're not. And what I mean by that is, you're loved in this household, and you might be loved by people that look like you, but when you step out into the world, the people that don't look like you are not going to take you in the way that others will. My son is 6'2". My son speaks 3 different languages. He plays 5 different instruments. He is in Lemoyne right now for aerospace engineering. If you look at my kid, you would not think that that's what he's in school for, but that's my kid. And if he walks out into the world and he just accidentally does something, no one's gonna know those things. So it's that hard love that I had to give to my son and have that story, that talk with him about watch yourself, protect yourself, because these things can happen to you. I send you out in this world, you're not loaded. No, you're not protected. You're loaded with knowledge, but you don't have a gun. You're not carrying something to protect yourself daily. Same talk with my daughter, and having that talk with her was, wow. But my daughter has actually worked with me in the studio, and she's 17. Same thing. She has a lot of those things going on with her, but she has to be careful as well, because she never knows. Something can happen to her. And I'm not talking about being kidnapped. I'm just talking about somebody could pull her over, someone could do this. Anything can happen to her. So having those stories, with those talks with my kids while creating this, I want people to be aware that, these things are happening. It's happening every day. And it's children of color. It's children all around this world. Like, we have children in cages. Like, it's not just the child of color. It's those things that are happening. Slavery is still happening. Trafficking is still happening. Kidnapping is happening. Lynching is still happening. These things are still happening in this world today. Why? So there's a love part of it, but there's this, I need to tell this story and people need to hear it. So that's, in this piece, it's the Florida thing. Like, you're carrying arms for what? To do what? For what? Just to kill someone and then you get away with it? And I experienced this myself. Like, my family's Cuban. They all live in Miami. They're there. And I go on a beach and a guy looks at me and says, "What are you, stupid?" And my son said, "Ma, don't say anything." He had a gun in his pocket. So I pulled off. So you face it, but then you have to turn around and just keep on going. So that's why I think of like love, because if you see the children in these pieces, that's my son and my daughter. So that's who it represents. My son, like I said, is 18, 17, and I have a 3-year-old. So the children are the representation of my own children. And also, it's the world. It's all children at this point.
Does anyone have any questions for Danielle directly?
I have a little one, just a little one. Tell me, I see a lot of red, black, and gold. Tell me about those decisions.
Last year I was told to keep my work consistent. And those colors just came out and I just said, okay. And as I walked around the studio, I was like, wow, well, it's working. So let's just keep it that way. Because if you've seen my paintings, a couple people in here know my paintings. Luisa's curated my paintings. They're big and they're bold and the colors are bright. And that's when people can say, oh, wow, you are Latin. Like the colors are vibrant. So I just decided that this will be, the color palette. And when I started introducing the shells, it was just like, wow, that's what I needed. There you go, the shells. Just that pop of gold helped right there.
Yeah, they're very strong colors. I mean, they're so meaningful. Target colors, blood, race. I mean, there's so many meanings, so many layers.
Yeah.
They're loaded.
Yes.
Colors.
And they're heavy.
And they're heavy, yes. That's another reason why it was named heavy. So I can put that into it. I picked up my first piece with these shells. I was like, what was I thinking? What was I thinking? And it's actually the young man who has looks like a young man target that's filled with the shells. I picked the piece up and I was like, I've lost my mind. That's what I had to say. And then the piece in the front is about 90 pounds. And I was sitting on the floor and I never picked it up. And then finally when they installed it, I was like, whoa, what is going on? I was like, okay. And then I had to say, wow, okay, I got all these shells for free. They didn't charge me. They didn't weigh them. So yeah, okay.
Well, that's interesting too, just because also what Donna was saying about gravitating towards working with concrete, so you could have worked with presence, work with weight, and the comment too about how often as women you're not told or taught to take up space, and take up weight, and there's a lot of declaration in the opposite direction of that now. I just had one more question. I had one more question, then we can go back out in the main space and wrap up and talk to you guys both a little bit. Angel Kyoto Williams wrote something recently about the times that we're living in, and she wrote, she feels like we're in an era, specifically, to this culture in this country, where we're coming into a deep knowing of who we are. And that's the stuff of bringing down systems of oppression. And so capitalism in its current form couldn't survive. Patriarchy couldn't survive. White supremacy couldn't survive if enough of us set about the work of reclaiming the human spirit, which also includes reclaiming the sense of humanity that the people that are the current vehicles of those very forms of oppression. So she was kind of talking a little bit about this era. I'm wondering, I do have a sense of how your work starts from very, very personal, but then you're obviously, like all works, are going into the political and to the context of our time. And I was just wondering if you have any kind of response to that kind of comment about your work within the context of our time.
I think a lot of artists are reclaiming space and territory, and I think that's what I'm doing now, with not being afraid, and wanting my work to be seen more and to be viewed and not to kind of hide. I am very shy, just so you guys know. I don't like to be the spotlight, but I think being in my studio working and now putting it out there helps out more with that. And just the times, as you said, the times we're living in, I think that a lot of artists are doing that now. They're putting out the work relating to society and what is going on. And I don't want to overload you with that with my work. I really, really don't. And that's why I think this series, it's loaded with it. But I will kind of like get out of that realm of what's going on. But every time I see something in the news, it feeds me. You know, it's always feeding what I want to say and what I want to do. So I do a lot of researching. I am not a TV watcher, so I'm always on the computer looking for like things that I can put in my work,
Is that
influences I can
the
put in
text,
my work.
like some of the text pieces?
The
and
text
the-
actually has scripture,
Yeah.
the Bible. So we have the book of Esther and the book of Job, of David, actually. Esther and Ruth are my favorite stories in the Bible. So you'll see scripture in my work. You'll see evidence of Bibles in my work. And that just goes back to the first book that a person of color was given. We were given a Bible, and that was it. That was the one book we were allowed to read and nothing else. So you could read that book over and over and over again. And as a child, and I don't want to say this, as a child, my mother, I did something stupid. I'm the only child. And my mother made me type the Bible from front to back. And I'm not joking. I sat in NJIT. I was in high school, and I don't even remember what I did. I really, really don't. And my mom was like, so you want to tell a story? Here's a book. Read these stories, and while you're reading them, type them. And if I didn't do it, then I was in trouble. But now the last 3 years I've become very fascinated with the Bible and the stories and just the history and the scripture and thinking of my name. My name is Danielle, and my daughter's name is Eden, and my son's name is Jacob David, and the names that have been passed on in my family. So just researching and those things that are starting to influence my life. You know, now that's a huge part of what's going on with me. It's just like, you know, discovering myself again. And that's actually what this body of work is discovering who I am, what I'm growing, what I'm becoming, and evolving into this different person that's not, you know, just picking up her brush and painting, but looking at images and things to work with and what they're saying to me. They're speaking to me. A lot of the work speaks to me. So it'll sit for a year or so, and then finally I'm like, oh, okay, I can use you. Like the blue doll, she sat, and I was like, oh, let's go, let's rock, let's work. And I just worked with her, you know? So that's it.
Anyone? Yeah.
Daniel, there are elements of Santeria. Is that natural or on purpose? Just happens to-
No, they're there because of my mom. They're there because of my trip my first trip home to Cuba. My grandfather, thinking of my grandmother, it's heavy, it's there. And after learning in my high school year what my godmothers were really doing, I started researching and then becoming involved. I'm not heavy involved. I know what it means, and it's a powerful thing. It's a really powerful thing. So there's, my mom is alive, but she's present. My grandmother's present. My ancestors are present in that, the Santeria that's here.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, if we want to just migrate out back to the shared space, and we'll wrap it up.
My kid is here somewhere. She has social anxiety, so she went upstairs.
And most importantly, this is your chance to talk with the artists, and they want to hear from you. So I again, and just thinking about some of the things we just talked about, and I feel like that always happens with shows too. When the work comes together, there ends up being all these really interesting overlaps that you may not have seen ahead of time. So, opening up to you guys. Anyone have any questions for the two of them together? Or Louisa, do you have anything to say? Sorry, my voice. Sorry, I'm calling myself out.
Actually, we wanted to talk about how long the difference in how long the work took with Donna versus Danielle.
So Danielle, what is your time frame for that?
6 months.
Yes.
Yes.
I started this series in April, May, June. It was my residency. I ended December. So April through December, these pieces were created. So about 6 months. It was about 6 months, but they just kept coming, and I was like, okay. And when you're in a residency, it kind of gives you that space to breathe and to work. And then I was surrounded by other artists who would come in and say things. And then when I came back from Cuba, I just started working like crazy. I couldn't stop. The only moments I had, or breakdown moments I had, was the bullet shells. Like, seriously. The bullet shells I probably won't use again. Because that one body, I'm going to say it took about 3 hours. And just, there's resin. I'm sitting there and I'm going like this. And I'm putting them down and cleaning the bullet shells to get, the bullet powder off of them. It can take hours. So I won't use that again. But yeah, about 6 months to create this body of work. And I wanted the body to stay consistent. I didn't want to step away and then come back and then it's not the same. It's not consistent. It's not the same, energy that's, exactly.
So it had a kind of momentum.
Yes.
As opposed to Donna's was like slow and steady, and then a constant investigation over.
Well, yeah, there's an earlier, and then these are more recent, but definitely not 6 months. That was not. Although, I mean, this was made in a 1 month residency, so that was intense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when someone asks you how long it takes to make something, what's the answer? You say a lifetime.
Yeah.
So it's irrelevant.
It's really not creating.
I have a question. Considering Index is not going to be here and sometime soon, how deep does it feel that both of you were able to share a space that actually reached every single person that came to see it? Thank you both very much, number one. And number two, how does it feel to be a part of the history of Index in Newark, New Jersey?
Nice question. I'm very grateful. I think this is an amazing space, and Lowell is great. Where are you, Lowell?
Come on,
There he is.
I mean, I've shown in group shows here, and it's been a great experience, and I'm sad, because it's definitely, for me, it's an ideal space. On a lot of levels, it's the right space. Because the concrete is not for everywhere, and the wall work is not lightweight, it's not super heavy like you think. And great. Thank you, Lowell. I hope we're not the last show.
You won't.
Not the last, but I meant to say that it's not going to be here in 2030.
No, that's
So I gave you enough space for us to think about, not that I want to think about these things, but we have to.
well, we know
Danielle
there's a
and
giant
Donna,
question mark hanging.
You guys are more double D than Dunkin' Donuts. Like we're at least right here, where we can actually have two women show work in Newark, New Jersey, one of the oldest, 1666, before America was here, this city was here. I just want to get your perspective, both of you, no one else's, just you, of how it feels to be right in the heart of Newark. Like where Sarah Vaughan sang, where Billie Holiday sang. You guys are right here. This is a moment. in black and white, and Puerto Rico también. And I love you both, and I appreciate this move. I really do want you to talk about how you feel being here right now.
Newark, I wasn't born here. I'm from Jersey City. Most people can tell when I speak. Newark's home, and I'll explain why. I've met people, and I don't want to cry, but I've met women who influenced me to be who I am. And that goes back to, and I will constantly say her name because her biggest fear was that she will be forgotten. And that's Miss Grauer. You have Miss Grauer, you have Alita Caldwell, Nettie Thomas. Nettie Thomas was the person who I walked into Arts High School. She looked at my portfolio and she said, leave her here. And I was from Jersey City, I had no clue. And then I went to Miss Caldwell and she said, you're good here. Then she introduced me to Miss Grauer, and then she introduced me to Miss Washington Bisa, who I love. And then from Miss Washington, it was Miss Grauer, and then from there was Ben Jones. Like, I've met the most influential and inspirational women in this city. Like in this one city who have taken me in. And when I was at a Faro that one night, and Bisa held me and Miss Grauer held me, we were honoring Miss Caldwell at Faro, they said to me, you're our child. You're our legacy. And you have to understand that, and one day you do. And standing here now, I do. Because when I work, I hear them. And that's a whole different story, because it's like, well, Daryl, you do this, do that, do that. And especially Miss Grauer, like, she would crack you up.
You know she's at MJ Park, right? 1974 self-portrait is at MJ Park for viewing, for everyone to see of Miss Gladys.
Yeah, so
like, she's right there. You could sit by her
Have
and
dinner.
look at her through your entire lunch, and I'm just it's there.
So that's what I can tell you about Newark, and Newark has been good to me. I'm from Jersey City, but my heart is in Newark, and my art is in Newark, and that's what it is. It's this city is beautiful. So.
Come on down. It's
I
a North
decided
story.
I made Newark my home
before it gets fake.
Before it gets
Well, I'm saying. I asked the question, I get to deliberate like Jeopardy. Get the vowel.
My family's from New Jersey, and I grew up in Cranford, and my family lived in Elizabeth and Newark, lived in Elizabeth and Roselle, and they'd come into Newark to shop back in the day. But I came to Newark to work at the Newark Museum in the early 90s, and that was my first real foray, right before the groundbreaking of NJ Pack. So I got to know Newark from the museum perspective, from the art, the art world in there, that little nucleus. And then I left and came back and ended up moving, and I live in the suburbs of Newark right now. Were you right in the city? You were that side too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I made it my home and became integral in the art scene here not that long ago. I think I started with Faro. I came to, no, you know what? I think the first art opening I had was actually the original Index before the fire.
And we don't think about the fire.
Newark Print Shop.
Because people go through fires every day, artists go
I lived through a fire myself.
And fire that yeah.
So
sad.
And I think it's a vibrant city. I love the city.
Absolutely.
I love coming in here and hanging here. New York is...
New York is $15.
Intimidating.
New York is $0. We're going
For now.
For now.
And not even anymore.
I've lived in a lot of different places in the state, largely mid and north Jersey. And I have kids, and I'm out in the burbs with them now, so I can't move, but I keep thinking about it and talking about trying to live here, and I don't know if I can afford it.
So I have a question.
Oh, and I also, One of the first people I met at the museum was Gladys. And Gladys, you know, later on when I started coming around the art scene here, took me in too and curated me to several shows. And I'm forever grateful.
The mother of North Arts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Really, I always felt like you do. I felt like she really saw me.
Yeah.
And I had many conversations with her at the museum. She was a volunteer at the workshop.
I have a question for both of you, because you're both mothers. How do you arrange your creative time around motherhood?
Well, yeah, for me, both of us have teenagers, so it's a little easier at this point. And for me, my first 2018 in the residency I did at Vermont Studio Center was a real leap for me, 1 month out, and intense. But because my studio is my 2-car garage, it's tricky. I'm either late at night or early in the morning, so mostly ends up being late at night.
I'm an art teacher as well, so I teach from 8 to 3. My child is here, one of them, and they've always traveled with me wherever I've gone, and I've tried to involve them in it, and sometimes she ends up being a studio assistant, and I don't give her the credit that she deserves, but I pull her, and I'm going to tell you why I pull her, and she actually knows now. I pull her because, yes, I need another hand, but I also pull her so she can understand what mom is doing, and what I'm saying, and why I'm doing it. So the last piece she helped me with was Eleanor Bumpers, and it was a huge, it's a mannequin, and it was in Paul Robinson, and it was Miss Grauer's show that Miss Grauer curated. So my daughter actually collaged all of the pictures of the women that were killed by cops on them. Because I needed her to understand that these things can happen, and they're still happening. Okay, and then it happened to Deborah Dander the year after, or this year. The same situation, same projects, cops thought she was crazy, and they killed her, Deborah Dander. But I don't know how I do it, and people actually ask. I have 3 kids. I have, like I said, an 18-year-old, a 17, and I have a 3-year-old. And I've had my 3-year-old in the studio with me, where, you know, he's looking things, touching stuff, but they've been a great influence in my work when they're there working with me, and sometimes, yes, they have to deal with mom's schedule. Like, she's slept in the studio, you know, several times, where she's on a futon on the floor, and I'm working, and she's like, Mom, when are we leaving, you know? But they respect it, and they understand it, and they're now really saying that my mom's an artist. They think I'm crazy, but they're like, my mom is an artist, and this is what she's doing. And they have their own crafts, and I support their crafts and their sports and what they do, and they do the same with me, and they know it just takes a lot of time, energy, and effort to do those things.
Yeah, my kids try to avoid at all costs. I need to drag them kicking and screaming. Although to this opening, my youngest kept hugging me and saying, Mom, I love you. Getting down, which is really a compliment. Because, you know, but I've tried to get them in the studio, so I commend you on that. Like, I've got so much skill to pass on to you. Why don't you want to, I don't want to be like you. That's not been fun.
I want to recognize your children for being a part of your lives. And I want to thank your children for being a part of your lives.
They influence the work.
Yes, they do, but we're standing out here not knowing what they deal with. And I want to acknowledge what they do for you guys. No matter what, my mother is everything to me. And my mother is an artist. She's always been my artist. And you guys, you back there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Not, you got it. Mommy is everything. I appreciate that from both. A lot of people don't talk because if I could sing a song, it'd be different. It would be very, absolutely different. But my God, we are in different times, and I'm allowed to not sing. My mother gave me the reason sing. My mother showed me Plena Bomba, and then she raised me in Newark, New Jersey, where I heard other genres besides Plena Bomba, Bolero, Aguanile. Like, let's understand, we all have our mothers. She pushed you out, thank God. It's all good. I'm just saying, I'm standing here, like witness to this. Nobody could tell me about me, because I'm inimitable. No one has my fingerprint. Not from Puerto Rico, Guamo to Newark, to St. Vincent Academy, to downtown Newark. Nobody got nothing on what my mother and father did for me. And I am willing to accept the only reason I can sing is because of my mother and my father, who were Puerto Rican from Guamo in the 70s and moved here to make sure I had a future.
Thank you. I think we had one more question.
Yeah, moms are deep. My mom used to take me to clean houses with her, so you're really lucky.
Yeah.
As an immigrant, I used to clean that toilet bowl and vacuum. That's why I work so hard today doing the work I do. But, moms teach us a lot of lessons. Always. Dads too, but I didn't have a dad, so my dad passed. But my question actually was about public art, because I heard Donna talk a little bit about this work. Your work could be outside, and I definitely see your work as public work. And I'm like obsessed with like getting 1% being funded to Newark, so that there is like a channel funding work, artists here that are created, so it's shown publicly. So although we're on that kind of like that mission to figure out where 1% funding is to get it to the Newark artists, my question to you is, where would you see your work if it was shown publicly? Like, where do you imagine your work being? That way we could put it in the universe.
Yes.
Yeah, lately I've been imagining it integrated into architecture. Like sides of a building or even part of a building. I mean, like that piece over there, I didn't imagine the whole botanical. I was looking at, it's almost like a brick and a wall. Like we're making multiples of those and have that be an entire wall. That's what I've been seeing in my mind lately.
That would be really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that would be so possible.
Yeah.
And then I just stumbled on another artist, a man, I should have said his picture, the guy. English. Now I can't remember his name. Williams? I don't know if it's William something or William Hewitt. He just, when he died, he was doing these carved concrete things. Like, there aren't that many concrete artists. So anyway, and those were all architecture and influence. There are architectural walls of art. So it gave me another solid example of where I would go when we're out in public.
We need to bring some of those people who are designing these buildings for our artist talks, right?
I got shells. I showed somebody their shells, and they were like, I want to donate to that. Not kidding. No, I'm not kidding.
I haven't thought about my work being in public spaces.
Do you need more bullet shells?
No.
I just wanted to lay that out for now.
I've heard from a curator. Curator came into my space, and her name is Natasha Becker. And Natasha said to me, her words were, Danielle, get this work off the wall. She just kept saying that to me. She was like, when you evolve, you'll know it, and I really need you to take this work off the wall. And that's why it was so important for this piece not to, it just shouldn't be on the wall. The piece is about being hung, so it should be hung. But those are her words. Get your work off the wall. So I haven't really processed that or imagined. I'm kind of like Donna. I do the same thing. I write everything. I'm weird. Like I'm not the artist that sketches. I'll make some tiny sketches, but I write. Like I need this. I need to do this. Blah blah blah. And how to process my pieces. So that's how I did it in 6 months. Just so you know, it's like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It's all laid out for me. I work that way. It's weird. But I don't know the outcome. And in my process, like Donna, like seriously, some scary stuff has happened. Like I've spray painted my face completely black because I didn't know how to open up a spray paint can. And thank God I had glasses on because if I didn't have the glasses on, I already have fake corneas. So if I would have sprayed that into my corneas because I have implants, I don't know what would have happened. I've burnt my lashes off with resin, like I just set them on fire. So like I'm learning the material. Bisa has yelled at me several times to stop doing this, go back to oil painting. But so my process is kind of like that. It's like I love material, I love touching, I love texture, but you know, I'm gonna learn a lesson at the end, like if I don't get it right the first time, and then I'll just keep doing it. So I don't sketch out, I don't know. I envision it, I know it's there, and I'll start working, I'm like, oh wow, it happened. So yeah, so my new thing is spray paint. I know how to use it now. I do after that.
Yeah, I guess I saw your work publicly because there's such an issue right now with gun violence across the United States and how, you know, there's just like, you talked about love and healing, and I think there's a lot of healing that could come from your work being shown publicly and acknowledging what is happening in our country with children, adults, like any of us could be a victim of gun violence, and what that also means to the Black community. You know, what your work is about, especially that Target piece was so impactful. And learning a little bit more about that, it represents your children, and the book bags are made out of bullets. You know, so I just think, you know, I could see your work publicly. I don't know you're the art, you know what I mean? But I see that somehow, and I think that's part of healing.
But there needs to be a lot more public representation
Oh, yeah.
of these kinds of images and symbols to help us.
But people, with what you're saying, I think some people are fearful of seeing, you know, like, even like with this piece, people are fearful of seeing those things. And someone came in and she walked around, she said, thank you. And I didn't understand why until she walked around, she came back and she said, you know, this just makes me think of my dad and what my dad might have went through, you know, when he was in, I'm trying to think Memphis or Tennessee or somewhere, she said. And she said, thank you for doing that and not hiding it. Thank you for forcing people to see it. You know, I've always had this thing where I feel like people are going to look at my work and be like, okay, let me just keep going and walk past. But my own best friend of 25 years, she said, you know what's so funny? I watch people go up to each and every one of your pieces and actually like sit with your work. She's like, I've never seen that before. She's like, I've been to all of your shows since your college days. And everyone took time with your work. No one was afraid. And I guess if I can create that body of work and have people who actually want to see this and be a part of it and experience, I'll keep doing that. But that was my fear. My fear was I'm creating this stuff and maybe people just don't want to see it. They don't want to hear about it. They don't want to understand it. They don't, it scares them. You know, the flag, the same thing. Like, you know, using the flag.
Well, the fear is part of the process of transformation.
Exactly.
Right? So that's something that we always need to always create and keep being bold. I wanted to end with a quote that I found last week by a poet and theologian, Patrick Otuama. He wrote, "We need stories of belonging that move us towards each other, not from each other. We need ways of being human that open up the possibility of being alive together. ways of navigating our differences that deepen our curiosity, that deepen our friendship, and that deepen our capacity to disagree, and that deepen the argument of being alive. This is what we need. This is what will save us. This is the work of peace, and this ultimately is the work of imagination. And so, very much like Gladys, who's an influence to both of you guys, who transcended as an artist, she's also an educator, and worked in a lot of different, worked with communities, as you both do. You know, you're very much carrying on what she gave you, but it is this deep work of imagination that even brings these relevant conversations forward. That is the work. So your work is absolutely beautiful, but I think the conversation tonight acknowledges the echoes and the different ways that the work continues outward. So thank you both for